Hi, my name is Mo Madeli. I'm the founder and architect of Cretaceous. Today, we're going to have a tutorial on Angular 2 and how object orientation impacts dependency injection. This is the first of a series of tutorials on Angular 2 and object orientation, and I hope you learn something from it. There are a few prerequisites, and I'm going to throw them up on the screen for you so that you have them. All right. One is you need to have Node installed and npm installed. This is going to help with setting up and installing packages as we move through the course. So I'm copying them from different screen, and I'm going to put them up here. All right, so first things first, you need npm and node installed. All right, and by the way, once you've done all these things, you can pause the video and come back. I'm going to put them up on the screen, and you can just pause it. Another is we're using Angular's command line interface package to create a seed project for us to basically build the system. Okay, and I suggest that you install it and you use this command to install. You need to install it globally. npm install-g Angular CLI. All right, and once Angular CLI is installed, go ahead and generate a seed project. Go to a proper folders that you like to, have different projects on, whatever you like, and at that folder, run this command. And we're going to create a new project, and G is the Angular CLI terminal command. So you go to the terminal. All right, and you type in ng new, and we're going to create a project called AJS2 underscore OO underscore dep-ing. So basically the patterns and pitfalls of object orientation in Angular 2, and with regards to Angular 2's dependency injection motor. All right, this is going to take a very long time. All right. And because it's going to be installing all sorts of node packages via npm, and these node packages have embedded node packages, node module packages. So it's going to take a good, on my machine, I have an iMac, a 2011 iMac, it takes about 15 minutes. Now, maybe you will have a different experience, a little longer, a little less, but expect this to take a long time. And a new folder is going to be created under the folder that we talked about first, called AJSOO dep-ing. All right. Now, go to that folder. All right. And once it's installed, you would run the command ngserve. All right. What ngserve does, it actually creates it creates a local server on your machine, and it builds that project in the folder you just created, and it prepares it for running. And the way you run it, you open up a tab in the browser, and you put in the URL localhost 4200. And localhost 4200 is basically where that project is going to run. That's support 4200, and it's built by the ngserve, and it's going to run. So you can pause over here, and we'll take it to the next level. I'm going to leave it up for a few seconds, and I'm going to delete this. Okay, so let's delete these. All right, and move ahead. Now, let's see, close this. Now, meanwhile, what I like to do is show you what the end product is going to look like. All right. So this is the user interface. This is a simple project, and the results look simple, but there are some things that need to take in consideration when you're actually implementing an object-oriented hierarchy with respect to Angular 2, and what impact dependency injection does through this class hierarchy. So we're going to create a parent class, basically a base class, all right? And we're going to derive multiple child classes, in this case 3, from it. We're going to extend the parent class. And we're going to inject a simple service, a fake service, into the parent class and see what type of impact that has on the child services and whether we need to inject that or not. And we're going to discuss. And what we're going to do is basically we're going to show that if you actually instantiate that parent class and register it, and this is going through the service. And as part of this dependency injection, we're going to demonstrate that although these classes have parent and child relationships, they happen to use the same exact service singleton. And we're going to get a little bit detail into that and how we actually registered that simple service, all right? And we demonstrate that by going to the registration button for those classes, and you're going to see that child 1 is going to be registered. However, the parent class also is going to see the same thing. So yes, the parent class and the child classes have access to the same service. They see the same data. It is a singleton. If you go to child 3, same thing. Child 3 is going to register itself, and all the other classes, prototypical classes in JavaScript and Angular, are going to see the same thing. And of course, child 2 as well. So this is the end product, and I'll show you how to get there. I suggest that you understand what this is, but it's basically self-descriptive, but we will get into it and show you what's going on. A few items. This course is not intended to teach. Let me start up a server here so we can proceed with the next one. All right, with the project. So while I'm talking, and as I was saying, the intent of this course is not to teach Angular 2, but the prerequisites is having a fundamental understanding of Angular 2, not necessarily an advanced understanding. And the same goes with TypeScript. We are of course going to be using TypeScript, very basic TypeScript, nothing complicated, but you have to understand what TypeScript is to a certain extent and how it positions itself with respect to JavaScript and Angular 2. Basically, TypeScript is a policing language on top of JavaScript, and it enforces strong typecasting, something that was not available in JavaScript. So we're going to make sure that we use some of the best practices anyway. The expectation is not that you understand Angular 2 in depth or TypeScript in depth, but do have some fundamental understanding of how these things work. All right. So I started another server inside that new directory. All right, and what is that new directory? I went and let me see, where am I right now? Once that, if you recall, once you've created and installed Angular CLI, go ahead and create that project, and the project is ng new. What is it that we called it? AJS200 dep-ing, and that's what I ran. And it created that folder. I'm not going to run it again. As I said, it's going to take a long time, and this is already created. All right, so you should have done all this before you're here. If you haven't, again, pause the video and make sure you go back to the instructions a few minutes ago as to what you need to do to set yourself up, seed yourself. All right, so let me get rid of this, and let's go to that directory that we created. CD edges. Oops. What is 200 ls cd ajs2, all right, d, there you go, ls. And this is a seed project we created, and I've have it opened in Sublime. And let's quickly explore what Angular CLI has done for us. It's created this directory structure, all right, this folder structure. Under it, there's some end-to-end testing stubs. We're going to ignore that. The actual source folder is very important, and of that, the most important is the app folder. Again, you can ignore the other folders. They are for setup and configuration. So don't worry about those. Focus on the app folder. And of course, Angular CLI has already created some basic Angular 2 components for bootstrapping the process, the application, and for actually setting up the first component. And we have it running. All right, so there it is. Now, first things first, I'm going to change the name of the application. All right, so I'm going to kill this tab and go to where this is running and show you how this is going to work since you have it kicked off with Angular. Since you have it kicked off with Angular CLI using ng server, it's show you some neat things. And let's change the title there from AppWorks to the new, and let's save it. I hit Control Save, Command Save, and note that ngserve running immediately detects that and rebuilds, and it's going to automatically refresh, reload the screen here, and there you go. So that's the first thing we do, and you know we're going to stop there with respect to the basics of Angular CLI, Angular's command line interface. So let's, so as one of the first, what we want to do is create a different folder where we have our new classes, parent and child classes, and maybe our simple service in there. So let's create that folder. We're going to call it parent child. Whoops, did I do this right? New folder, parent child. All right, there it is. And I'm going to create under this folder our very first component, which happens to be our base component. All right, you're going to see I'm going to copy things here and there, which is fine, and I might delete them as we move along. So you might see things. That are going to come in and out, but we're going to clarify those. So this is the file that we have. Let me save it. All right, and this is called, we're going to call it my parent, right, .component .ts. I'm going to save it. So there it is. We've created a file, my parent, and we're going to delete, get rid of some things. All right, for now. All right, and I'm going to, don't worry about this. All right, and don't worry about this. Okay. And I'm going to create my parent component HTML and my parent component CSS as well. All right, and let's do that. My parent.component.html. Save it. There you go. And let's create my my parent component. .css, and let's just make sure this is typed properly. Parent. All right, component, and let's save it. There you go. And if you go and take a look at my parent component, the actual TS file, this is a first order Angular component, and we're going to actually use it. And the selector is my parent, and there's going to be some content, and it's HTML. And of course, we can style it. I'm not going to style it. All right. So let me extract the HTML and populate it. All right, and there it is, Control V. And I'm going to comment this out as well. Ignore that. basically what we're doing is we're creating a base class, call it my parent, and my parent has a method called do something, all right, and it has a constructor, all right, and let's actually take that, we can take that constructor out as well, all right, okay, take that constructor out as well because we don't want to do that, and we are going to actually call my parent component and instantiate it. So let's give that over there, and let's call it my parent, all right? And basically we went into app component.html. This is what I'm talking about. You have to understand some of the fundamentals of Angular, all right? So these should be all motherhood and apple pie to a large extent. This is not considered advanced Angular 2. So you should know that we basically created a component, all right, and we're going to add it to, which is called my parent, and we're going to actually invoke it. Now what's interesting is that we need to import it, all right, my parent component, and there it is, control copy, all right, and we're going to import it into and make sure it's in the list of declarations, all right, and inside the ng module, all right. So let's go to the ng module and say it's there, and there you go. So I don't know what else I have missing, but we'll see. We'll let this run. It's invalidated. It's going to run automatically and see if it's going to pop up, and we're going to review it very quickly. All right, so what is it saying? Unknown word, my parent component CSS1 unknown word. Yeah, of course, because my CSS is invalid. Remember when I was creating the file? Just get rid of that, all right, and save it again, and it's invalidated, and let it run. So let's revisit what we did, and we'll take it from there. Now, all right, so all right. So what is it again that it's saying? My parent component TS 331. My parent component is 331. My parent 331. Oh, let's get rid of that as well. All right, so we that's forward-looking. We're going to start building this up, and there it is. We have that parent class there. So how do we do this again? We created a parent component. All right, there it is. We gave it a. We didn't give it a constructor. All right, we gave it a dummy method, do something, don't worry about it, and we actually invoked it by adding it to the declarations list in ng module with the proper imports, okay, and we went into app component components HTML and actually used it because what? The selector was my parent. So we are using it, my parent, and there it is. All right, very nice. Now the register doesn't do anything. It probably is going to give an exception. We're going to bring up the inspector so you can see. But yeah, it's not doing anything, which is fine. And that's good. So what is the next step? All right. Now, what I would like to do is add the constructor, an empty constructor to parent component, an empty one. And let me show you how that works. All right, boom. And I'm not going to pass anything to it, okay? I'm not going to pass anything to it. And that is still working properly. And the point of this is that I wanted to, whoops, what is it saying? What is it saying? Simple service is not defined. My parent node, simple service is not defined. Oh, yeah, this goes to, all right, there was something there. So I'm sorry, we're going kind of backwards, but this is actually good. You see what the errors are, and we can move with this. So what we've done is we've created a parent component, all right? And this is going to serve for future to inject a simple singleton service. We're going to create the service too. And we have a dummy method, do something added to it that may or may not access that service. You're cheating. You can see it's going to access that service in the future. And it's also going to serve as the base class for forward-looking child components. Okay? So let's run and see how this is actually reflected in the inspector. So let's go to the source, app, parent, child, and what I'm going to do is that's my parent component. I'm going to put on a breakpoint within the constructor and a breakpoint inside the do something. All right, now let's, before I do that, I neglected to mention I have do something defined inside my parent component, the base class. So what I've done, I've actually invoked it, intercepted its click within its HTML, and it's invoking that do something again, which actually does something, and we're gonna visit it. But let's do it. So let's first refresh the screen. It should break on the constructor for my parent component. There it is. All right, and let's take a look at this. All right, this is my parent component, parent class, which is basically what we have defined for the title. So title, this title is my parent class. Oops. My parent class, which is good, and let it run. So now it's constructed, my parent component. Let me click on register, where we're intercepting it, this click, right, through the HTML, and it's invoking do something. All right, my parent component HTML, and what is it doing? It's just doing nothing, it's just returning. So hit that, and there it is. I put a breakpoint there, and it's doing nothing. So again, this of course is the same thing, and we're all good. So we have a very fundamental, very basic Angular component ready. And let me release it in the debugger and let it go. So what is the next step? All right, the next step is to create a very simple service. All right, and we will do that. It's a very simple service. All right, we're going to call it simple service. All right, and we're going to put it in the same parent-child directory. New file. We're going to call it simple.service.ts. All right, very good. And let me save it. And there it is. All right, and I'm going to copy over the project that I've already done. And note, to create this service, I import an injectable, and by prefixing this injectable command before the class export, I'm basically adorning it. This injectable is a decorator. It's going to add metadata to this class, and in this case, metadata that makes this service, this class, recognizable as a service to Angular. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, I have a constructor I've added, and there is an array that I have in there. I'm going to comment that out for now. All right. And I'm going to comment everything out that's related to it for now. It's a very simple service. I've added a constructor. I don't have to, but I have, so you can see once we build it and inject it, that this is actually constructed and constructed once. Now, when I say constructed once, this becomes a singleton available to the entire application, and I'm going to show you how that's done. Now, how do I inject it, and where do I want to inject it? I want to inject it into my base class. So let's first import it. There it is. So simple service, I've imported it. All right. And then what I'm going to do is inject it into, all right. There we go. So there it is. I've imported it. And this is how you inject a service into the base class called myParent. All right, you import it, make it available, make that module and that particular object. available, and then this is all TypeScript. This is how you basically pass a parameter to a method, in this case the constructor, and we call it simple service of type simple service. And we're going to put a console log just for the heck of it, and nothing else changes. All right, so let me save this, and let's see, this became invalid again, and let's see if it works. And it will not work. The reason is that we've created a service, but we haven't told Angular one more thing. And what we need to tell Angular is to say that there is an actual service called simple service, and copy as a provider. And let's pause here because I want to talk to you about this. And this has to do with the singletons. All right, and let's import it. All right, so what did we do? What did we do? What we did, and notice I saved it. This is running again. So while this is running, we'll talk. What happens here in app module? All right, we have a keyword under @ng-module, which is called providers, and this is an array of all the services that we have created, and these make it available to the application. And this is a simple service, so I've imported it and made the class object available. But more importantly, this providers keyword is not only available in ng-module. We could have put that as a keyword under component for my parent, and put that service in there. And the big difference there is that since we put it here in the NP module at this state, at this position in the application hierarchy, this makes it available, the service, as a singleton to the entire application. All right. So if you inject it anywhere else in the application, all the components are basically going to gain access to this single object with the same state, not a different instance of that service object. Now, if we had used providers and simple services inside my parent component, this would have made this service instance only available for this component and its children. And children doesn't necessarily mean class children, but children that are invoked within the HTML, so other tags that are children of this component, and we're not going to do that. All right, and that's a different story, and that's not the intent. But I just want to make sure that this is brought up, because the fact that this is a singleton is critical to the application. All right. So here it is. It was invalidated, and checking started a separate process. All right. So what is this? Simple service. All right. A function of type is either run or must return a value. All right. So this is giving me a little headache here, which is basically saying that, hey, you need to return something here, which I haven't, because in TypeScript I've mentioned that this is going to return an array of any types. All right, and I'm not returning it. It's giving me a headache. In fact, if you see this little red squiggly line under here, if I click on it, it gives me the same message. So Angular CLI compiled, it designates this is valid, but it did give me a little message here, say, hey, this is running, but you've got a little bit of problem. Why don't you address it? If you address it, you're basically defeating the purpose of TypeScript, where you want to strongly typecast. And in this case, I've broken it. I've said specifically this register function is going to return any array, yet I have not returned anything. All right, so very cool. So let's take this to the next step. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the parent service and upgrade it, and which I did. And that is basically adding the my parent service, injecting that simple service in there, and adding an array registered, which is basically gaining access to the registered portion, to the class register, classes that are registered with the service, all right? And how do we do that? This is, I would not say it's best coding practice where you actually have what is service data made so explicitly available inside a client component. But I'm doing this for the intentions of demonstrating. So I'm gonna create an array, all right, of strings, all right, and I'm gonna actually do something and say, hey, register the simple service register the title of this class. So all register does is basically add this title to some array within that service, which is going to show us basically the state of that service. So that's done. And if you go now to the service, the register, we need to complete it, and that's all it does. And it's saying that, hey, push, hey caller, client caller, calling my particular service API called register, pass in a string, we call it class name, and I'm going to push it to my local state attribute, which is called array registered, all right? And I'm going to return it, all right? And I'm going to return it to the caller. So let's do that. And I notice I saved it, it's invalidated, ngServer is going to automatically run again. Meanwhile, let's see what happens here. So since I called that service and it's returning an array, this is where I'm keeping that array available to this particular base class component. Nothing special is happening here, all right, except that if I go and look at the debugger, activate it, and I hit register, now that do something, you remember? That was doing nothing. Now I've actually within it asked it to invoke that service, and it's returned to me the multiple times that I clicked on that register. It's returned to me that array that is being maintained within the simple service. Now, how am I going to show that? Very, very cool. I go to my parent component and I say, hey, why don't you iterate over array registered? Remember array registered, which was in my parent component. This is array registered. It's a string. All right. And there are different ways I don't even have to use array registered here, but I'm just doing this for. I could have called that function, the service function right here, which would have returned that array register. So I've done that. This is a decision. In other words, I could have said simple service. Simple service, right, dot registered, all right? And this would have returned it. Now, the simple service, I can set this array registered, all right? I could set up a, I'm sorry, it should be registered. Whoops, sorry, let me fix this. Simple service register, all right? And pass in title. All right, so it's something along these lines. You could do that, but this is a matter of how you like to organize your code. For the intent of this exercise, this is sufficient. So I'm going to maintain a local attribute within this component, this array within this component, and I'll iterate over it using Angular's ng4 directive. And my object is the instance of each one of these elements of the array. And I'm going to print it out on the screen. So let's do it again. And notice that it's validated. Now, if I do this, I say, hey, parent class, there's an ng4, and it keeps iterating over these things. Again, in terms of performance, you may want to consider what you need to do here. But in terms of iterating, do you want this to be iterated on every click? This is an item that you need to take into consideration when your application grows, becomes more sophisticated and performance sensitive. So cool. So let's actually run this application with breakpoints in it. All right. All right. So we have these breakpoints, and note we are now in the again in the constructor. And let's take a look at this. Note we haven't done this since we injected the simple service. Now, if you look at it, the simple service has been injected, and it's available. And of course, the public array is available too. All right. So that's very neat. And let that run. And if I click on do something, it's going to go and populate that array class. And since that array, that array, and since that array has one element in it, it's going to invoke Angular to kick off the ng4 and show at least one, right? And let's do it again. Let's do it again. And it is there again. And because this time now it has two, it's maintaining state within that singleton. So great. All right. So now we have a very basic Angular component. We call it my component. We've created a very simple, and by the way, that my component has do something in it, and this is going to become more important later on. And that component has a very simple service with a register method injected into it. So now let's create a new file, a new object, which is a child of this base class. So we're going to derive or extend. I still use my own old Java and C++ terminology. We're going to extend this class, and we're going to call it my child 1. All right, so let me create it, and new file. Whoops. New file. Control V. All right, save it. All right, there it is. And let's make sure that we populate it. Whoops, it's populated. Very good. And let me save it. All right. This is actually the wrong thing. I want to call it child 1. So let's call this child 1. All right, child 1. And let's rename it to child 1. So see, that's what copy and paste does. All right, child 1. That is insufficient, however, to get this running. And we're going to come back to it. Let's make sure we add it to app modules, all right, in our declaration, all right. So we're going to have my component, also child 1, added to my declarations, all right, and make sure it's imported. Let's put it over here. There it is. Compiling. Now, what I need to do is use this my child component, and I will. And I'm going to go into the area where we're actually adding these components, and I'm going to add my child component. Oops. All right. And by the way, I'm going to put these in divs so that it's a little easier to manage. All right. So let's put these in divs. All right. So anyhow, if you recall, we created the my parent component, and now we have the my child component. And I'm going to save it so that it invalidates the ngserve and it reloads the application. But what did we do? If you recall, we had a base class called my parent component. Okay, and my parent component is going to be used as the mechanism for building for extending the child classes. Okay, And if you look at the child class, it extends from my parent component. All right, my parent component is basically imported. And I'm going to give it a title, child class 1. My parent component, the title was parent class. And I give it this child class 1, and we call it a day. Now, we have a constructor here. This is very crucial. Now, this, since it extends my parent component, I need to call the my parent component constructor. So I need to pass in super and pass in whatever parameters that are needed for the constructor of the parent component, which is the simple service. And there it is. I am constructing it with my simple service, so I need to inject it in the child class and super it, and this way we know that's happening. Now, here's the fun part. The fun part is that if you recall, when I click on register, this eventually, this you're going to see the my parent, the do something is invoked, all right? And since my child, also if you look at its HTML, has that register click do something on it, the question becomes, well, my child extends it, but where is this do something? There is none because it has inherited from my parent who has it. So this is basically your inheritance, and it takes in the methods. And if I click on it, it would actually at runtime determine which object it is, whether it's a class parent object or the actual child1 object, and pass in its title. All right, and as such register its title with the service. All right, so both of them, whether it's my parent HTML, are using do something, or my child HTML, which we call it child X because we're going to have more children. We call them child 2 and 3. They're all going to use the same HTML. And this also has something, although my child does not have a do something method. It's inheriting it from its parent, my parent component. So let's see how this works. So the parent class registers itself. Then the child class registers itself. And notice, both of them have access to the same state in the singleton. All right? So if I register the parent again, both of them have access to the same data. This is part and parcel demonstration that that service that we injected in not only the parent but in the child is a singleton, and they're both referring to this attribute array inside that service, which is manipulated, and class names are pushed to it via the register, which is being called by the do something in the base my parent component. All right, here it is, my parent do something, and this do something is inside the HTML. So as a demonstration, I'm going to go add another two components, my child 2 and my child 3. All right, so and they're going to do the same thing. All right, so let's do my child 2, control copy. I'm copying from another screen. You wonder what the heck I'm talking about. Control V, and we're going to save this as my child 2. My child 2.component. All right, there you go. And my child 2 also is going to refer to the same my child X component HTML. All right, they're all going to do the same thing, the same template, refer to the same template. And let's do my child 3. All right, let's call it my child 3. And of course this is called 3. All right, let's save it, and we'll call it my child 3 component. All right, and that's that. All right, and we have these new components. We just have to add them to our declarations so that the application is aware of them. All right, and that's basically it. And make sure that they're imported, and that should cover it. right? So this is 2. This is 2, right? And 2. Oops. Right. All right. So basically, we've mimicked my child 1 with my, and we've saved it, and you see it's invalidated. It's building it again. And what I'm going to do is, again, go into our handy dandy play area and add those to our HTML. All right. And this is basically going to show the same thing as we did before. It doesn't matter how many children you create from the base class. They're all going to have access to the same singleton. All right. And after all this, we're going to come down, let this thing compile and build so you can see it. All right. And there are those 3. Parent class is a parent class. And child 1 class already has in the service, parent class should be, so this is going to register itself, of course, parent class, child class. Child 2 has the 2 above, it's going to add itself. And of course, the ones above, they all have access to the same service, and their NG4s are going to be triggered to update as well, and same with this. So there you go. So this is, again, part and parcel demonstration that although this service, the simple service, was injected in my parent component and also injected in the children, the derived extended children, they all point to the same constructor. All right. So here are, this video comes to a culmination of a series of questions. So does this mean that the constructor of all child classes have to have the service injected? The answer is yes. That's how basically TypeScript works, and this is to a large extent how object-oriented systems work. When you derive a class, the constructor has to call the class of its parent through a super mechanism and pass the proper methods to it, okay? And in our case, pass the proper attributes to it. And in this case, our attribute happens to be our service, our simple service, so that's fine. Next question is this the same service across these? The answer is yes, and don't forget, it's yes for a variety of reasons, but most importantly, the fact that this service was defined at the very top application level, app-module.ts, and inserted inside the provider's array. This makes it available to the entire application because of where app-module.ts is. All right. Now, we could have added it as I said, could put a provider inside the parent of the inside my parent component, and then it would have been made available to the DOM children, to the selectors. All right, and you can experiment with that, and then it would not have been available to the entire application, but maybe to that class and its children. And when I'm referring to as children, I'm talking to HTML Angular 2 selectors, not the inheritance hierarchy, not the derived classes. All right. Now, if you look, if I take away my parent, everything still works. The fact that I have my parent invoked here with its own singleton doesn't mean that these guys are going to break. So if I comment that out and I save it, and this is going to invalidate, it's just going to remove the parent class. But since the derived classes are super calling the constructor of the parent, they are still going to have valid, and they have injectors, and they have the simple service injected. So this is an example of the mychild1. Note that we commented out the selector for the parent, but since this guy it's its own instance, is going to call the parent class. All right, although it was not instantiated by Angular, it is instantiated here through the object-oriented inheritance mechanism and Angular's dependency injection. So everything is going to work still. So we can take a look. Child 1, child 2, child 3. Great. All right, so let's go back to my parent. I'm sorry, app component, reinstate that just so we're back to where we were. And all right, so then the question becomes, and this is really the big question, all right? If I am injecting the service inside these child classes, do I really need to inject it inside the constructor here and just rely on inside the parent constructor and just rely on the parent constructor to do the traditional method inheritance or protected or public attribute inheritance? And does this component even mean anything at that point? This component decorator? The answer is, well, it depends. Technically, you can remove the constructor here and not inject the simple service, all right? And each of these children would have their own services instructed. And of course, you could remove the super here because you don't have to call the super to invoke the constructor, all right? So you could remove them. It's not a big deal. So the question basically for me becomes, if you have a parent class, do you inject the service or services? And my answer is I would go ahead and inject it if for nothing but readability. All right. It basically is going to instantiate the same service anyway. It's cheap, but it maintains its readability. All right. But that's me. Within your own organizations, you might decide that you're going to leverage another pattern and say that, well, we're going to keep this class abstract, the base class abstract, and as such, the constructor is not going to do any dependency injection, but it will perhaps do any other type of initialization with respect to private attributes, which is fine. All right, so that's another way to go. Again, does the base class, and another thing is that, does this base class ever need to get instantiated? Do you need to add it as a tag? And we're talking in the context of Angular 2 now. Do you ever need to do this? All right. To me, if I have a base class, I rarely want to instantiate it. I want to keep it abstract. I want the derived classes to actually be instantiated and get called, which in this case would be like this. All right, so you comment that we kind of alluded to it. All right, so if that's the case, then the notion of dependency injection becomes, at the parent level, becomes technically questionable, and the only argument again becomes readability to me. All right, so pick your poison, decide what you need to do, and do it that way. But you've seen different options on whether a base class requires, well, technically it doesn't, dependency injection, and the leaf classes, the child classes, are going to do it anyway. But in terms of readability and code maintenance, my suggestion is keep it. But again, the question is whether you are ever going to instantiate that class or not. Is it purely abstract or not? And thinking along those lines, you may question whether the parent class ever needs to have the services injected in it. Now, in terms of Angular itself, there are some questions with respect to object orientation at large. And we've today focused on dependency injection. There are other items to consider. If you have a base class, what does this component mean if you're not intending to ever instantiate that class by basically inserting its tag, my parent, anywhere? So what does that component mean? So does that mean that you can pick a mechanism or pick a pattern where base classes are never components? So these are things to consider. Another item is that there are arguments by the developers of Angular that in the context of inheritance being inferior to class composition, Angular has taken the tact of well, you can compose classes. So although you could always inherit, but inheriting decorators is problematic, and it just is not going to work. So if you have class derived from a class and its children, you have to basically copy that component identically if you want to make sure it has the same decoration and metadata applied. So these are some questions that you have to consider when it comes to Angular. Today, again, we focused on dependency injection, but there is a lot to be said about inheritance and decorators within Angular too. Anyhow, I hope you have found this useful. Again, my name is Mo Medeli. I'm the founder and architect of Predacious. Thank you for listening.